Hi everyone, I hope you're all enjoying your self-care kits that you received. For anyone that requested the baked goods in a mason jar, this video is for you. I'm doing a step-by-step instruction on how to turn this jar into a pan of delicious brownies. So I have my mason jar here, and it's got everything pre-measured out for the dry ingredients. So we have flour, we have brown sugar, we have granulated white sugar, we have cocoa, and then for the fun extras we have chocolate chips and then walnuts as well. So on the label it tells you what wet ingredients you need to add to this in order to make the brownies. So following this, it tells us that we need 2 eggs, which I have right here. It tells us that we need 2/3 of a cup of oil. So I'm using vegetable oil, but you can also use canola oil or any type of oil that you have on hand. We then need a 1/4 cup of water, which again I have measured out already, and then a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So all of this is going to get mixed together in a bowl and then poured into the pan. So I find it easiest to mix the wet ingredients first and then dump all the dry ingredients in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with my eggs, cracking my eggs. And my oven is already preheated up to 350 as the label says. So it's nice and hot and it's ready for the brownies to go in. So I've got my 2 eggs in there. I have my 2/3 of a cup of oil. I have my 1/4 cup of water. And then I also have my teaspoon of vanilla extract. So you can use a whisk for this if you want to help with whisking the eggs. Once you do add the dry ingredients, it will get pretty thick. So even a spoon is fine. Again, whatever you have. Baking can be pretty flexible with regards to the ingredients that you have. So just use whatever you have on hand and have fun with it. So hopefully you can kind of see everything's all mixed in there. And then we can add our dry ingredients to it. So just dump everything in. If it's packed in, you might need to use a spoon or a fork or something to help get it out, which I'm just grabbing right now. But once you kind of get everything out, it all should just kind of fall in. It's mostly the brown sugar that gets a little stuck. And make sure you get everything right down to the bottom and throw it into your bowl so that way you're not missing out on anything. Okay. The nice thing with mason jars too is that you can save them, wash them out, and use them for something else too in the future. So I'm just going to mix everything all in. Doesn't really take a lot of mixing. That's the nice thing with brownies, is that they come together quite quickly, which is great because it means you get brownies quicker. Now, the mason jars that you were given have walnuts in them. So for anyone that doesn't like nuts, you could always take them off the top because they're right at the top layer. But brownies are usually pretty good with some extra things thrown in, like the chocolate chips and the walnuts, but it's also a matter of preference, so if you don't want them, you can just take them out. But if you've never tried it, I would recommend trying it. So I've got everything mixed together in the bowl right there. So it's a very thick mixture. If you've never made brownies before, you'll notice it's very, very thick. Very different from a cake batter. It's not runny at all, and that will also impact how it cooks as well. So we are going to pour this into our pan. So the label tells us to use a square pan that has been greased. So you can use an 8" by 8" pan or a 9" by 9" pan. Whatever you have in your kitchen, feel free to use that. The only thing that will matter is how thick your brownies are. So if you're using an 8x8 pan, your brownies will be thicker than if you're using a 9x9 pan. It might also depend on how long it takes to cook as well. The thicker brownies in an 8x8 pan will take longer than a 9x9 pan. So I've got them into my pan right now, and they are ready to go into the oven. So if you take a look, they are ready to go. I greased my pan with Pam. You can use any type of cooking spray. You can use butter. Again, whatever you have on hand, just make sure it's greased really, really well so the brownies come out when we're done. So again, I'm going to follow my label, which tells me to cook it at 350 for 35 to 40 minutes. So they will go into the oven and check them around the 35-minute mark. Usually with baking, we use the toothpick method to see if things are done. So we'll take a toothpick and stick it in it and pull it out. But with a cake, you'll notice that the toothpick comes out, and when it comes out clean, that means the cake is done. But with brownies, brownies are really fudgy and moist and chewy, so it's not going to be the same test. You kind of have to look and make sure that everything's cooked and it doesn't wiggle a lot, but the toothpick might come out still a little bit wet. That's the major difference with brownies. So I'm going to put this into my oven now. I'm setting my timer for 35 minutes. And we'll see you in 35 minutes with some delicious brownies that are done. Okay, so it has been 35 minutes, and now I'm going to check on my brownies out of the oven. It smells so good in here, very chocolatey. Now make sure you use your oven mitts so you don't burn your hands. So these are my brownies. You can see they're not falling out, they don't really jiggle or anything. I'm going to put them on my cooling rack. You can tell they have crispy edges, like a brownie should have, but then you can tell it's cooked in the middle. It's not wet looking. So I did 35 minutes, but it will depend on your oven, the type of pan you're using. If you're using glass or stainless steel, it will also impact. So just kind of keep checking it. I have my cake tester here. So like I talked about before, you can stick it in. It comes out with a couple little crumbs on it, but again, we said brownies are chewy and that's to be expected. So I'm gonna let this cool for a bit. Once the pan is not hot to the touch, you should be ready to eat. They are good to eat while they are still warm. So just be careful, but enjoy.